Biden's plans for trillions of dollars in new taxes and government spending, while also revealing for the first time how the administration believes inflation, employment, and economic growth would be affected by his agenda. Here to discuss with us is Bloomberg Government's Emily Wilkins in D.C. So, Emily, let's just talk about this budget that is set to be unveiled today. How much of this budget is actually expected to be enacted and be permanent?
That's always such a great question. I mean, when the president puts forward his budget, it's half suggestions, half wish list. Congress is the one who really has the final say on what does or does not get into this budget. That said, President Biden, his party has control of the House, and they do have a slim majority in the Senate. And so that means sort of positive things as far as the president trying to get his own agenda passed. But there's certainly a lot of things in here that are going to see debate from Republicans, particularly the high price tag that he's put on it. We saw, inflation numbers go up more than expected last month. We have seen them continue to rise at this point. We saw Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen come out yesterday and say that she does expect inflation to rise, but for a few months and then go back to normal. But that could easily color the discussions and debates around this bill and exactly what size it needs to be to make sure that it's reinvigorating the economy the way that Congress and the White House would like it to.
So is this the argument, Emily, that Republicans are taking right now? The inflation argument? Is that how they're responding to this high price tag? Is that what their narrative will be?
We're hearing a lot about inflation this morning. I'm sure we're going to hear more as this budget is rolled out. The argument that Republicans have made now almost since the start of the year, back with the first spending package on COVID, is that the more money that the government is going to put into the economy, the more we're going to see inflation rise. And that is going to hinder, not help, the U.S.'s recovery after the COVID-19 virus.
And Emily, we heard from Senator Mike Braun also on Bloomberg TV. He called this unbelievable, which is interesting and maybe previews part of what the Republicans will say about this. But what else do we know about what is included in this $6 trillion budget that Biden is going to be proposing today?
So a lot of the budget is things that we've already heard of in regards to President Biden's plan with infrastructure and then the so-called social infrastructure, which includes things like lowering the cost of childcare, having unemployment benefits, and as well as expanding a universal pre-K and 2 free years of community college. That's all going to be in here. Other things that we're really looking for is the Green Book. That's the breakdown of the tax proposal that President Biden is putting forward. It's something that we're already seeing the powerful head of the House Ways and Means Committee, Richard Neal, begin to dig into as he tries to forge a compromise, not just for Democrats and Republicans, but even just keeping all Democrats on the same page with this bill. We've already heard multiple concerns from Democrats across the spectrum over what has been proposed on taxes. And given the slim margins that Democrats have in the House and the Senate, it is going to be a challenge for leaders to keep consensus going forward.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry about that, Tim. Emily, you mentioned Richard Neal. We also have a story out on the Bloomberg speaking about just how significant he is going to be in these negotiations. Can you just walk us through sort of the role that he's going to be playing?
Sure. So spending bills always originate in the House. And so the House committee that handles taxes is the Ways and Means Committee. Richard Neal is the chair of it, and he's very powerful in that position for making determinations on how things go. He told our Bloomberg reporters that he's already gotten 222 different requests from members on what they want the tax bill to look like. So it's no small thing to try and put all of those together. Of course, big question here is exactly what these taxes will need to be paying for. Are Democrats going to go with Republicans on a bipartisan bill? We've seen negotiations continue this week between President Biden and Senate Republicans. They're getting closer together on a number, but there's still a big gap between where both sides are. And Democrats are ramping up pressure on President Biden, saying, hey, we're at the end of May now. We need to get moving on this. Perhaps we should just go alone.
Yeah, but Emily, I do wonder to what extent the president will be trying to sell this budget to the American people. We saw yesterday a relatively long speech from the president at Cuyahoga Community College in Ohio, where he really laid out why his economic plan and indeed shamed some Republicans who had voted against the rescue plan, but had then gone to their districts and touted parts of it as if they had a hand in it.
The Biden administration's position on this has been that America is certainly not out of what needs to be recovery mode, that there are still many people who are suffering because of loss of employment, either because they're not able to go back to work or they can't find jobs, and that help is still needed at this point for the American economy and for the American people, even as we've seen some other indicators of brighter spots in the economy. So that's something that you're going to hear President Biden continue to push, continue to highlight the help that is needed for Americans, and also this argument that he doesn't just want the U.S. to come back to where it was pre-pandemic. He wants to make sure that there's a strong recovery and that the U.S. is really coming back strong after this virus.
Bloomberg Government's Emily Wilkins. Emily, great to see you this morning. Enjoy a long weekend. Thank you so much for your time.